There you go.
Okay.
All right.
Wasn't close enough. All right, so this is a planning commission workshop. We're talking about B&Bs, and just, this will be our third workshop that we've had. So I know some of you have signed up to do public comments. Do you guys want to just get them out of the way first, and then, yeah? Kyle, do you want me to go get the paper, or do you want to just
sure,
let
I'll
them
grab
come
it.
up? Do you guys want to keep them to 3 minutes, or do you want to just let them talk? What do you think?
How many are there?
I've just got one that's signed up so far.
Just one? Okay.
Just let them talk.
All right. You want to go ahead and call whoever's on the list up?
Yeah, Sean Faust.
Okay. Hey, Sean, just say your name and your address.
Okay. My name is Sean Faust. I live at 3079 East Van Buren, Eureka Springs, Arkansas. It's the Evening Shade Inn. To introduce myself, good evening. My wife and Shira own the Evening Shade Inn. Some of you who know me, retired 20-year veteran of the Army. We took everything that we had when we left the Army and came to Eureka. We loved it so much, bought our business. Tonight I'd like to discuss the culture of Eureka, the Airbnb effect, and the conditional use permit. You can call it the oasis in the Ozark, the hippie hideaway, where the misfits fit, the hole in the Bible Belt, paradise on the mountain, whatever you refer to Eureka as. Let me ask you, what makes Eureka what it is? Why are you living here, and why do you stay? The answer to these questions is usually found in the culture of Eureka. Airbnb's slogan, live like a local. But when locals can't afford to live like locals, how can that happen? Instead, what you get is a front row seat to a town built on culture and character that the very people who created the culture and character can't afford to live in. When the locals, artists, and musicians who make Eureka Springs so eclectic can't live here, we become Anywhere USA. When the melting pot that is Eureka thins and loses its flavor, we will be tasteless and empty. For the exact reason, New Orleans has eliminated this type of lodging altogether. One official from New Orleans stated, we are one of the earlier cities to experience the growth in short-term rentals, and we were in a unique place because so much of what we sell is culture. It's art, it's food, but the people who make the culture, who make the art, the food, and play the trumpets had a hard time living here. So if the locals who make our city special are forced to move away, what's left? There are a lot of cities asking themselves this question: are we a city or are we Disneyland? To be clear, when I refer to Airbnb, I'm also referring to Vrbo, Couchsurfing, Flipkey, Homestay, and many other services alike. The Airbnb effect follows a pattern everywhere it occurs. First, locals have nowhere to live and get squeezed out of town. It then kills the real estate values of neighborhoods, limits the places to live, and as tourism increases, more workers are needed to support the increase. But there is no lodging for the workers, businesses begin to suffer. Another stage of the Airbnb effect is the revolving door effect. Dan O'Brien, a researcher from Northwestern University, addressed crime rates associated with excessive short-term rentals in residential neighborhoods. He stated, you're essentially eroding the neighborhood's natural capacity to manage its crime. The absentee of long-term resident neighbors damages neighborhoods and the sense of community. The number one complaint of short-term rentals is absentee owners. Short-term rentals with owners on site is how the program began and how I feel it should remain. The conditional use permit was put in place to protect the integrity of the town and limit the oversaturation of businesses in residential areas, as well as altering the scope of what the zone is labeled for. So in closing, if you take Eurekans out of Eureka, you'll become Anywhere USA. The Airbnb effect is a downward spiral that has already begun, but just because we see smoke doesn't mean we cannot fight the fire. The CUP was put in place to protect this city and its businesses. We need to enforce the rules and clean up any language that is blurry or ambiguous to manage our town and our resources. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, Sean. Does anyone else want to come up for public comment? Come on up. race each other? Go ahead. Yeah, come on. Yeah, come on.
All right. Like, leave that. That's just one of hundreds of articles that I saw about short-term rentals.
Sorry, will you give your name and address, please?
Ken Fogo, 150 North Main.
Thank you.
Have a Eureka Art studio and shop down there, Eureka Art Gallery. Anyway, I'm opposed to any more short-term rentals. It causes problems. When I moved here, I bought in a commercial zone. And what you're trying to do, essentially, you're spot zoning all over the city when you're starting to allow short-term rentals. B&Bs, there should be a fixed number. That's all the people want here. They're not people that are residents. They're not wanting more B&Bs. They're not wanting more short-term rentals. And I think you're eventually being a big problem. That article is about Fort Lauderdale, Florida. The people there cannot even sell their property because there's too many short-term rentals. So too many short-term rentals spoil the broth. That's what I came to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to come up?
Hello, committee again. My name is Melinda Large. I am in the Pines Edition on Oak Ridge. I am coming to get more information, but to express and to tell you a quick story I just heard this weekend. The city of Breckenridge, Colorado, which is known for tourism, has a population very similar to Eureka. Tourists. At the present time, they have now been deemed no longer a city. There is no more room for the city council to live in. There are no homes. That means they are losing their police. They are losing their firemen. They are losing all the infrastructure that deemed them as a town. Why? Short-term rentals. It is full of short-term rentals. So they haven't figured out, and they're putting in laws trying to undo the mess of their short-term rental rulings that they had made. Way back, we were in the first part of Ordinance 2311, am I right on that? On Ordinance 2311. And then when I heard this is back on the table of any sort, it's another short-term rental. What I'd like to understand is what is driving us to change this moratorium? What is the impetus that's making that happen? The second question is, if lifting the moratorium, how do you plan to balance tourism and the local housing dilemma? How do you plan to balance it? The folks that have the short-term rentals, much like those in Breckenridge now, they're all short-term rentals. The locals have nowhere to live. They can't afford it. I give a cautionary note of revisiting anything that lifts a moratorium on short-term rental, because I don't wish to become like Breckenridge. Thank you.
Does anyone else want to come up? Come on. Okay, take your time.
Pat Matsoukas, 5 Mountain Street, 40-plus year resident. So I was here in the early years when you could afford to be here. I cannot afford to be here anymore. I am being financially outed. When houses that should only sell for 100 and some thousand sell for $400,000, we got to ask ourselves some questions. You know, I don't know if you all know where I live. I'm on Mountain Street, below Chelsea's, little white, what was white stucco for years, now it's a green stucco, little tiny house. We paid $28,500 for it in 1983. And I was so blessed because I came from Chicago, where I knew I would never be able to afford a house in my lifetime. I was so grateful for this opportunity. I have stayed in my house. I love my house. It is even zone commercial. I could care less. I like where I am. And every day people say to me, you know, you just need to move. You just need to go. And I'm like, wait, this is my home. I've been here 40 years. I'm integral in certain parts of a town that I love. And if we keep pushing us out based on money and short-term rental, we are denying ourselves a long-term town. There are several incredible books, The Geography of Nowhere, these different books that have come out talking about pros and cons of these topics. And I would encourage you, if you are not ready to make a decision tonight, take all the time you need. If it takes another year and we have to do block by block group meetings, we could do it, because this is so important. And I want to say this because I have to go to another thing in a minute, but when I looked up Planning Commission tonight, just to see what was said, it says, prepare or have prepared a plan for the city to receive and make recommendations on public and private proposals for development. Prepare and administer planning regulations. Prepare and transmit to council recommended ordinances implementing plans, and advise and counsel the city government and other public bodies. The commission shall have the duty and function of promoting public interest in and understanding of long-term coordinated municipal planning. Which brings me to my next point. We have zoning all over town, this spot zoning thing. You know, none of you were here when it all, maybe you might have been, you were here. Okay, so it started with, I want to say Crescent, Dairy Hollow House. Is that pretty close? That's right. She had to have it. And she was a writer and everybody loved her. Okay, we'll give it to her. That was the first. Within an hour, there were 10. Within a couple of months, there were 20. And everybody was jumping on this bandwagon. And the commission didn't have the power or the foresight to stop it at the time. But you guys do. You guys have the opportunity now to say, who do we want to be, Eureka? And if it takes a year to get a real plan together about zoning and who we are, let's do it. I think it's crazy that hotels have become apartments. Houses in town have become nightly rental. I myself have several nightly rentals around me on Mountain. I never know who these people are. They come and go at all hours. They change your rhythm. They change the rhythm of living in a town. You know, when you walk out the door in the morning, I had Miss Jo across the road from me for 1,000 years. I'd see that woman out there every morning, and what a joy. You know, I had McClellan's below me, and then I had Paul and Jack. Those are amazing gifts that we have in this town. And the more we go into this nightly rental spot zoning, we don't get to know each other. There are plenty of hotels. Let's keep business with business and residents with residents so we can contain and have a future as a town, as opposed to Disney World. I thank you for your time. This is not an easy task. I encourage you to just take your sweet time about it all.
Thank you, Pat. Anyone else want to come up?
Hello, I'm Shira Faust. I live at 3079 East Van Buren. I'm Sean's wife. We own Evening Shade Inn. And I just had a few things to add on to that. It's my feelings that if you have more of these short-term rentals and you don't know where the people are coming from that own them, for one, the monies are not getting recirculated in our community that they're making on these. They don't have to uphold all of the rules and regulations that we do, and there's no way to police to make sure that they are doing those things, because you don't even know which ones they are. You just know they exist. With our business alone, we are struggling big time. We haven't been able to even make our mortgage since sometime fall of last year. We are digging on reserves in my husband's military retirement and VA retirement. We're a family of 4, and we're all artists. We participate in Bruges shows and in community events. We're out and about and celebrating and supporting our community. And we have wonderful artists here like Julie Kahn Valentine, who's on display right now, but Julie is 80. And so what happens when the older established artists of our town that create our culture pass then you're left with our children. But if we can't afford to live here because we get outed, we won't ever have that. We will become a Branson. They'll move the Walmarts in, they'll move in the Pizza Huts and more, fast food restaurants and things. We'll have more bike rallies, stuff like that, and it will be the same place everywhere is. I've had multiple people tell me that this is like a fairy town. It's like a little piece of Europe. And if that goes away, if it doesn't have the mystique, they will not come back. I've been coming here for a lifetime. And I love this place. When my husband asked what I was going to do, because he was retiring from the Army, I said I'd like to own a bed and breakfast, but only in Eureka Springs. I've been coming here since I was a child. And this is all really sad and personal. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? No. Okay, come on up. Just state your name and your address, please.
Tom Mitchell, 4 Oak Ridge Drive. And I've been in Eureka for quite some time. I usually do not come to these things. But I just want to make a comment within the last few months and within definitely last year, I've been noticing more people coming in, and they're not even obeying the laws. They're flying up and down. I used to wave to people, and they'd come by, they wave now. We're already having new people move in that don't even look at you, kind of like you're just in the way. And if you would go to more of these overnight bed and breakfasts, I only fear that the amount of less people to be kind is going to increase. They're going to leave their garbage bags or whatever on the curb, pickups on one day. What happens when the dogs get to them? Who's going to take care of that? That's all I have to say is I want this town to stay the little town it has been. And I'm proud of this little place. All right? Thank you much.
Thank you. You want to start us out?
Yeah, okay.
On just kind of a review of where we're at, what you are
During the
working-
meeting, I will be presenting a draft of an ordinance.
Okay.
This is our last workshop. I think there's 2 things, very serious things that we need to decide. The first one being the owner-manager of the B&B. We cannot change what we currently have. If we decide that it can only be the owner of the property, that would be when the property sells or transfers. I don't think we can go back and retroactively say you have to live there.
Okay, so right now,
It's
it
an
has to
owner
be a
and manager.
manager and owner that lives there.
And what I'm finding and hearing is that it's not the same service with the manager there as it is with the owner of the property there. Mm-hmm. They're not vested. We have a couple that don't serve breakfast. They really have become tourist lodging. Mm-hmm. I think that when we got rid of all the tourist lodging in R1, R2, and 3, kind of opened the door for people to come in and say, oh, I want to do a bed and breakfast. And the reality of it, it's not a bed and breakfast. So that's one, I think, major thing we need to decide tonight. And the other thing we need to decide is, do we want to present to City Council that, just as we have done for tourist lodging, is if you sell your property and it's a bed and breakfast and the people that are purchasing that property want it to be a bed and breakfast, yes, it can be transferred as long as it's in good standing. If they choose not to do it as a bed and breakfast, that goes away. Nobody gets it back.
Oh, okay, so you're talking about having limited numbers in residential neighborhood.
Limited numbers, or there's just no more.
Right.
And through attrition, they just all go away. I think those are the 2 big things that we have to talk about and decide tonight.
Okay, so right now, for that particular circumstance, we're saying, based on our code, that they have 6 months, and it's all reflective on whether or not they renew their license, and it's all based additionally on whether or not they're paying CAPC taxes. So are you saying that we would have to update those ordinances to say something different then, correct?
Well, I think I can show the updated ordinances later, but right now, without updating the ordinances, and we're just talking bed and breakfast tonight, we're not talking tourist lodging. The problem is that our code book addresses CAPC taxes at the grandfather level. It does not address CAPC taxes at the CUP level. We don't really have any authority to deal with that. That is actually CAPC. There is already one that I'm aware of that we were notified last summer that they had not, whether they hadn't paid their taxes, whether they hadn't done the forms, I'm not exactly sure what came of that. The property got sold, and nothing got done. And I think that if we change ordinances such that anytime a grandfather transfers, a CUP transfers, that is a big part of it. If you have not paid your taxes, that property may not be transferred, and it needs to be done before it's sold.
Okay, so, I mean, we can easily do that within our application so that we have that information prior to a meeting. And would we necessarily have to change that within an ordinance to do something like that?
I think it mostly falls down to enforcement, and we've had a hard time tracking that information. In the packet for tonight, Ida has given a document that she's starting to give out with business licensing that makes them aware that they need to be current on those CAPC taxes on that property before she will issue them a business license.
Okay. So she's going to work with the CAPC and keep up to date on that then?
Yeah, and
her time frame is what? When do business licenses go out? Is it usually, I think it's November, they're paid in December, but
I think she tries to have everybody finalized with the late payments and stuff like that by March.
Okay.
But she's going to come to the meeting and we can ask her that question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think we need to focus on, do we want an owner there, or do we want to let a manager there?
I mean, what do you all think? I know where I'm at with that.
I know where I'm at on it too.
So, and,
I have a question.
sure, go ahead.
The owner or manager, do they get their mail at that address? I mean, you would think if you're operating a business where you are a resident of the address, be it a manager or a owner, you would sure get your mail at that address. So I just want to know that whoever gets
Well,
the mail should.
someone has to live, I mean, even our current ordinance, it says the manager or the owner of a B&B, if they have a CUP in a residential neighborhood, they have to live on somebody has to live on property.
So they would be getting
So
their
they
mail.
should be getting their mail.
Because that would establish residence, right, if you're getting.
But they
mail.
might use a post office box too, you know, they could use one of them down at the post office.
Okay, thanks.
But, I mean, I'll start out. I honestly think that a manager should live, or an owner should live there. And I go back to the conversation I had the last two workshops. I think it should be owner occupied. And the reason I say that, and some of this is for y'all here, the reason I say that is because there are so many houses that are smaller. There are houses that are big, but the smaller houses, in reality, if the ordinance had been enforced over the years and it required a manager or it required a owner to be there, those buildings aren't big enough for living space for an owner and to have, 3 or 4 bedrooms in them. I mean, I've got a couple that are, well, one that's pending, the little gray house. That's not big enough for anybody to live in there unless they were able to turn it into a tourist lodging. And in this case, they can't anymore because that's gone. So the only thing left is a B&B license. But if they say, hey, I'm going to let somebody live there as a manager and not actively manage it, but just live there. So what if I bought a property and I have an apartment and I go ahead and I say, well, somebody's living there because I'm renting that long term. But then I hire a a management company to come in and get my reservations, clean the rooms, do all of that, and that person is just living there. I think there should be some responsibilities within the manager position that assures that they'll be there. And part of this goes back to what we talked about before about Jacob doing short-term rental inspections. Can he go into the building? Can he make sure that they've got the things that they need for safety? And can he also inspect and reassure us that those people are living there? Because I think people have skirted that for quite some time. Several have.
I totally concur with you.
So I'm for owner occupied.
Right.
Come on up to the mic.
I have a question. This is beyond semantics. This is the line between tourist lodging and what you're talking about it's all the same to those that are nightly or weekend or whatever time. It's a short-term rental. And I understand the B&B, those that have the cups, the license to do that. But right now, and I have a recent experience of being in one where it was totally violated. Totally. And I thought, my God, the neighbors, this is why we hate you. I mean, seriously, this is why we don't want tourists, any tourist lodging in residential areas. It was a nightmare. But as I'm sitting here listening, I'd like to understand the line that we're talking that separates these two things. Manager, owner, tourist rental, Airbnb, Vrbo, pick one. Where does the line supposedly get drawn? It's not this black and white matter nowadays. They're being listed on all of these sites, if I'm making sense to you. So as I'm listening to you, I'm having a hard time understanding how, yes, a manager would, or an owner, it's all gray anyway. The people that rent it, the short-term rental, whatever that is, Airbnb or B&B with no owner, that's all gray. You just fit right into that gray area. And how do you change the wording beyond semantics of putting it so that the hotels get the business, the people that have the licenses get the business? And it goes back to 2311 when we had this discussion. And it all comes down to enforcement. Mm-hmm. There's rules and there's guidelines. There's called enforcement. Jacob is one human. One human. This is a tourist town. People are coming in and putting them in their downstairs. They're putting them where they can to pay off the mortgage. You don't even know that. You'll never know that. Who knows it is the hotels, because they're not getting the bookings.
Well, and I think it also is helpful if our residents, because you're right, we don't know everyone that's out there. I mean, we have a list of individuals who have registered to receive a license, and we have ordinances that say these are the things that you're required to do. So if we hear of someone who isn't doing those things, then we do have a process here that allows planning to go ahead and send a letter to that individual that owns that property, and they'll come in for a show cause hearing. And then we'll ask those questions, you know, are you doing this? Are you doing this? Are you doing this? And they have there is the chance that they could lose that license based on what they are or aren't doing. But if we don't know about them, you know, you're right, Jacob is only one person. And we sit here and we have these meetings and we know what we can do based on our ordinances and our recommendations to City Council. But we may not know that there are 10 illegal Airbnbs out there. There's just no way for us to know those things. So it really is up to the residents to let us know when those things are happening. And I know it's an uncomfortable situation to have to report that, Kyle, we still have the ability for someone to do the reporting, right? And it's anonymous? Do we have that on our site, the esplanning.org site, or is that on the city site still?
I think the information is there, but I think it has to be submitted in person.
Oh, it does. So when the new website got up and running, it changed a little bit? Is that what you're saying?
I have not seen the complaint form on the new website.
Okay, so maybe we just check that
Yeah.
and make sure we've got something there. So even with Jacob and even with the city, there's no way to police 100% of everything 100% of the time, right? So we would need, or the city would need, some participation and knowledge of someone who is illegally operating a lodging business. I mean, there's no other way that Jacob's going to be able to, drive up and down the streets and everything. And there's no way for the city to know about everything that's going on out there. So it is kind of an effort of the whole community in order to be able to figure that out. Linda, do you want to come up real quick?
Let me finish.
Okay.
Step up. There's other cities, because when we
And
were
I'm sorry, it's
This is Melinda.
Melinda. Okay.
Yes, when we were working on 2311, ordinance 2311, we looked at Harrison, who has a reporting site, and it leaves some anonymity, because there's also, in this uncomfortable, unkind time we're in,
People can be mean.
people can be mean. So
Right.
we need to look and leverage in other towns, other cities. Fayetteville has the reporting system, and they're having a nightmare of a problem right now. If Harrison can have it, by God. So, I'm just saying, there are already established ways to capture the information, offer some anonymity to the public, and advertise it to the public. Hey, if you see something that isn't right, here's where you can report it. Here's where you can report it.
And Kyle, do you know if there's a module on the new city website that would do something like that?
So not that I'm aware of, but I think now's a good time. I'm talking with Mike Maloney at CAPC. There's a platform that will scour the internet for Airbnb rentals, tourist lodging rentals, and provide that data to him so that he can cross-reference who should be paying taxes. We can work with that on, do they have the proper permits, or they...
And he'd be willing to share that?
So we've just started having that conversation,
Oh, okay.
but part of that interest was, yes, it would be a benefit for different departments in the city to be able to access that information.
Okay. Linda? Can you just, Linda?
I'm Linda McBride.
Yep.
All I was going to say on this is you can talk this into circles and circles and circles with excuses and excuses and excuses of why you don't and why you can't. I can tell you for a fact, there are many planning commissioners before you and now who know where the problems are in some of the B&Bs, and nothing is ever done. Even if you go to the office, if you go to the city attorney or to the police. So you're passing the buck when you say we don't know how to do it. It's easy to do. Stuff from Fayetteville has been given time and time and time again to the Planning Commission and to the City Council. They look the other way. The bottom line is what you even have on the books today should be enforced. Instead of just going in a circle about do this, start enforcing what you have on the books. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
I was also kind of curious, what is the punishment for violators? Why is it so hard to say that residential neighborhoods are just that? They are residential. We have commercial neighborhoods. We have hotels, bed and breakfasts, and other things that are already established. They are even lined out. I read the zoning stuff online in preparation for this, and it even lists specific addresses of things that exist in the residential neighborhoods that are allowed to be businesses business entities and churches and things like that. So why is it hard? Like if you move here, you buy a property, and you should be the owner. If you're in a residential area, you should be the owner, and you should either live in that house or rent it out long-term to somebody so that they become a member of the community. And if not, if you want to have a business, buy a business. We have full empty hotels all along 62 and other things that are being vacated because nobody comes to stay with us. You know, I mean, it's just getting kind of ridiculous. When I drive down White Street or any of the streets downtown, and every other house I look at is an Airbnb or a short-term rental, or I run into somebody when I'm downtown participating in things, and I meet a nice couple, and they're staying in an Airbnb because they got their rental for $60 a night, and it costs $189 to stay in my cheapest room on the weekend. And I make you breakfast. I give you an afternoon dessert. It's a full breakfast that I deliver to you in a basket. We are on site to be your concierge. We make reservations for you. We have 5-star reviews. The only reason we have a 4.9 on anything is because we kept the old owner's reviews and responded to every single one of them and said, we don't operate that way. Please come back and try us again. And so that's the only reason we have any ding. Everybody who comes loves it, and we are fighting with whole houses where people don't have to eat at our local restaurants because they have full kitchens and they can rent for $60 a night, which, by the way, not to be elitist or anything, but welcomes in a different crowd of people. They're not going to buy the art in our art shops. They're not going to value what we value. My husband made an interesting kind of comparison where he said, you know, if somebody came in from another town, a whole bunch of food trucks came in and they parked all around downtown and anywhere else, we have a food truck lottery, and they would out them in a heartbeat and say, you are destroying the restaurants of our town where we have great chefs and other things, and they would be so kicked out. How come those of us that bought here and felt we had reassurance and things like the cup and protections are now failing, and they're moving in these like food truck style Airbnb and quick term rental properties? So that's my question, is what is the punishment? I mean, you know, not to be combative, I certainly don't mean it that way, but to say, well, you know, we'll bring in so-and-so if we think they're in violation, and they'll have to stand up and they'll have to report and they'll have to say this. Well, that's all fine and dandy, but people lie. I hate to say that, people lie. I've heard recently about somebody who supposedly wanted something. They don't really live on the property. They came into the meeting and they said, oh yes, I absolutely live on the property, and they got their way. And it just doesn't work. We are all going to be ruined, and we're going to be pushed out of the town we love, and it's just going to be horrible. It's going to be horrible.
Thank you.
I'm Laura Lee Wilcox, and I live at 12 Eureka Street, and my concern is, like some more people here, the control. How will this be controlled? How will it be regulated? When people turn a place in that they feel is in violation for whatever reason, and then they meet with you or whoever they meet with, and they say, oh, those are my friends, and this is what I've been told. How do you control that? So maybe some of these other articles they've talked about, I've not read them, Fort Lauderdale, other cities, maybe Fayetteville, maybe they could help with the guidance. But it seems to me like it's the control and it's the regulation that I am most concerned about. I have lived here over 20, or had a house here over 20 years, and have been down here several times speaking usually against a rental going in somewhere. And even if planning was on my side or whatever, sometimes council would overrule that and it would go in for whatever reason. So my concern is control. How will that be done? Regulation. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's the other individual?
Ken Fogo again. I just wanted to say that a couple things. If the penalty is high enough, people won't do it. If they think they can get around it, they will, if it's for money. A lot of people will. And the other thing is you're saying that I think that the CAPC is keeping up. It's like the fox guarding the hen house because they get the tax money off of this. I don't see how that's going to work. Thank you.
Thank you. Who hasn't come up? I can't. Oh, okay. Okay, come on up, Sean.
Sean again. So in doing research on the Airbnbs and everything, I found that Paris had such a huge problem with it that they instituted a 25,000 euro fine for having an Airbnb, which, I mean, no one could keep up with that in that area. But New York City just recently also got rid of all their recent ones, and they had over 40,000. And the only way that they could manage that was to make it not worth those people's while to operate. So as a suggestion, I would like to say that perhaps there should be a fine or something like that to make it not worth people's while to operate instead of wearing one person out to go around and enforce. I think that once someone's been made an example, that word will get around a whole lot quicker.
Thank you.
Pat Matsoukas again. I would like to say it's time that we review the idea that bed and breakfast are sort of passé. We need to stop the spot zoning. As soon as somebody's done, when they go to sell, they do not automatically get anything. It's a dead issue. That CUP dies with the owner. The property cannot be reinstated with the CUP. We could be just that simple and say, enough is enough. We recognize growth has changed. We have different needs. We are a different town now. No more. When you sell your business, your house, if you have a CUP, you don't get another one. It's over. And I like the idea of doing a massive fine. You know, this coming in front of people, and, you know, how many times have we seen people come in here and look at you and say, I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know I shouldn't do that. I didn't blah, blah, blah. We are human beings. We feel bad for everybody. But if you laid a $10,000 fine on somebody doing a B&B illegally, they would remember. And the whole damn town would stop it in a heartbeat. Is that not true? And I also want to bring up, and I have to leave so I won't be for public comment, but I want to bring up this parking thing because this is part and parcel to being good neighbors. We have a horrible parking problem in town. During one of the recent parades of something, I came out of my house on Mountain Street, I come down to Main Street, and there is some guy with his big ass, truck parked on the grass. Not even, he's on Main Street on the grass, parked, because he wanted to go to the parade. And when I look at my neighbors who have nightly rental, their zone commercial, they're entitled to do this. But I've seen the parking thing go on because sometimes those guests have guests. Right. And so now I had somebody in my driveway. I pulled in my driveway. I said, can I help you? Well, we're going to go visit so-and-so. I said, well, that's nice, but this is my driveway. Well, we're only going to be here 20 minutes. Well, that's nice. Let me see. Let me just drive around the block for an hour. You just let me know when you're done. Because I know that my life is less important than yours.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, these are things we have to think about in this parking thing and B&Bs and all of it. And I think the time has come for us to say, you know what, we don't need to do this anymore. We are a vibrant town. We've got enough going on. We can get rid of some of this stuff that we needed in the early days to bring people here. We're better than this. Anyway, I have to go. I want to thank you for all you do. I know none of this is easy. I've been a planning commissioner. So sorry. Bye.
Hi. Ramona Capps, born and raised local. I grew up here working in the restaurants, went out in the world for 40 years, and got the chance to move back and not be dependent upon the tourist industry, although I am affected by it because I do have an illegal VRBO on my street. And my deal is that we're a little late on this, guys. I've been telling the city for years, there's only one reason a born and raised local like Kenny Pyatt, who lost his wife to COVID, would sell his house to a guy that was from Pea Ridge. Only one reason a guy from Pea Ridge is going to buy a house in Eureka Springs nowadays. Sorry. And I told him that, and then he put up a fence, and we had an agreement on our street, no fences in front of our house, and now There's a big fence and ruins the look of the street. But anyway, nonetheless, there's a lot of ordinances that are being broken on my street. There's 12 houses on my dead-end street. 4 of them are out of ordinance, and some of them more than one. I'm a very solution-minded person. We need more enforcement officers because there's simply not enough enforcement officers to take care of all of it. One guy can't do it all, and the police are no help. I got called for trespassing because I was mowing my neighbor's yard that's this high because it's out of ordinance, and I was mowing it. They called the cops on me for trespassing, and the police told me to call the city. Thank you guys for everything you do.
Sorry, Ramona, will you give your address?
Pardon?
Your address.
Oh, 114 Shelton.
Thank you.
This is so hard. It just, everything brings up something new again when it's so personal. When we talk about CAPC and about tax monies and things, that's another something to think about. If you're having $60 Airbnb a night rentals, assuming they're being honest and paying their taxes, we are only getting the portion of CAPC taxes on a $60 a night rental. Whereas if you're staying in, the Crescent or our place or somewhere else, the rentals are priced appropriately according to what it costs to run businesses and to operate. And so we will be pulling far more taxes and once again keeping money in our town. If somebody from California comes and buys a house or something to Airbnb here, they're likely not using our local banks. Local banks will eventually crash. I mean, there's a whole lot of money circulation that we should want to keep here to keep our town thriving. And I think that that's a big issue as well.
Sure.
What is the driver of us even discussing taking off a moratorium? I want to understand, what's the trigger for this?
So the city council, I think David's out there right now. City council agreed when we brought it was at least a year ago, right? Because we've done a couple moratoriums as far as extending it. We knew that there were issues in the neighborhoods. We knew that there were people who were violating or not following the ordinances correctly. So we asked City Council to put a moratorium on any new CUPs so that we could fix some of the problems, review some of the problems, try to figure out how to make this work, because the consensus was, or a lot of people were saying that we want our neighborhoods to be neighborhoods. And so we brought it to City Council and they agreed to do a moratorium. That one was about to run out. We went back to City Council and said, could you do another moratorium? And so once that moratorium goes off, it's basically sunsetted, which means unless City Council votes again and makes a decision based on what planning recommends, based on what people are saying out there within the residents or our community, they're going to vote to either to do away with a bed and breakfast. Those are the options. Do away with the bed and breakfast cup, which is the last one that's allowed in residential neighborhoods. They can say, nope, we're going to go ahead and still allow that CUP to be in residential neighborhoods. They may say, we need to update some ordinances. We need to, do some other things. What are your ideas? And so that's why we're doing these workshops, so that we can get this information and we can present it and make a recommendation to City Council. Planning can't vote. We can vote here and say this is what we'd like to recommend, but City Council will be the place where that decision is made, one way or the other. And so that moratorium is what prompted these workshops, because we know we can't turn on a dime and say, in a day, this is what we want to do, and city council is going to say, okay, great, they're going to want to know what our ideas are, what our recommendations are, and then think about it to do that final vote. And so that's where we are. We didn't want to start it in June, knowing that the moratorium runs out in July. So that's why we're here, and that's why we've been doing it. We have not had this many people at any of our workshops, so I do want to say thank you for coming. We had maybe one person, maybe last time, and then the one before that, we didn't have anyone. So we may need to think about doing maybe another workshop or so on this particular topic. No? It's not up to me. It's up to the commission. So, and the other thing is that, if you're in front of city council, they're the ones that are ultimately going to do the vote. I know there have been a lot of postcards that have been sent in that they don't want any more CUPs in residential. Getting up and having that on record that you've spoken and you've said, hey, I don't like it, I don't like this part, or I don't want them, or whatever, that's important too, because all of that information has to be compiled so that they'll know what what residents want. And the more numbers mean the more they're going to look at it and make a consideration. If nobody shows up, they're like, well, it seems like everything's fine. So that's why we've been doing the workshops. So we've got about 10 more minutes. Ann, do you want to, Ann's kind of been leading this
I'd like
process.
to hear what each commissioner thinks about the owner-occupied.
Okay. Well, my position is definitely owner-occupied is my stance. I think that if they have value in the property, they're willing to put the money down, they ought to live there if they're going to have a license to operate that. The other thing is it's also the person's living there, then he's a neighbor. He's no longer a stranger, and he has a not a community reason to improve his property, keep it up. And make sure the trash is not, the dogs don't get the trash and everything else. But yeah, one of the things I think, and Melinda was a great person a couple of years ago when we had the illegal in our neighborhood, and 40 people showed up at city council. Well, this is an election year, guys. Those aldermen have to run for re-election. So if you think they're not doing a good job, one of you people in the audience can run. Anybody here could run for alderman if they sit in the city limits. So anyway, my take is that, we keep the B&B as it is, but we ask and we enforce and we push the CAPC to let us know when those situations occur that we found out that they hadn't paid their taxes. And then we need to make sure the city is invoking that rule of pulling a license if they don't pay their taxes.
Tom, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think the owner-occupied is the better way to go. I get the impression the last couple of times people have come to us, they say, we're from out of town, we want to buy this and have somebody manage it. And we may retire here sometime in the future and move back to Eureka and operate it. But in the meantime, we live wherever, and it seems to me it's really just an investment for them that they think Eureka values will keep going up, and they can indirectly, increase the value of the property without actually living here. So I do agree the owner-occupant is my opinion anyway. Yep.
I'm all for owner-occupied. So, Mike, what do you think?
I support the owner-occupied also, and I just want to express again the passion and commitment to the citizens for their concerns. And I would push for an indefinite moratorium and a substantial penalty and fine. I know we have to recognize. Just I want to say, I'm new to this. I'm not new to the town, but I'm new to this, and this is really impressive. So I appreciate everybody. But I am supporting of an owner-operator living on property.
Ann?
Well, I am too. And I think that if that were in the ordinance, yeah, if they knew they had to live there, they're not going to buy it.
No. No.
No. Now, I'm kind of torn on that they just go away. We have some that are so large, I don't know what else they would be used for. That is a concern. I have one on my street that I live to, and I have a tourist lodging, and of course it is owner occupied, the bed and breakfast, there's no problems. The tourist lodging just got sold. I think all of the legal tourist lodging, other than this one that just got sold, is owned by people that live in Eureka.
What about real estate disclosure?
Well,
Sorry to interrupt.
no, that's okay. We have
Hey,
tried.
Ann. Hey, Ann.
What?
Will you just repeat her question on the mic?
About a real estate disclosure? We have,
A sign that says, I'm buying this to live in.
Sorry, will you come up to the mic so we can,
I'm sorry, I was trying to sneak it in there, and I meant to say it when I was up here. It's a real estate disclosure. Make them sign something that says, hey, I'm buying this to live in it, because I called, is anybody here from Kings River Title? I called Kings River Title one day and talked to them. Seriously, I've went this far with this, you all. I really, really have. I've really researched this because it was driving me nuts. That this person's sitting down there renting this house for $175 a night. 4 nights, 4 weekends, do the math. Who wouldn't want to sit around and make $2,800 a month? And all you have to do is come over and clean it every once in a while and mow the lawn. Wouldn't you like to make that kind of money, y'all? Yeah, we all would. I'd love to have. But I'm just saying, make them sign something that is but again, it's going to come back to enforcement. Again, it's got to be enforcement. We've got to have more people help the city enforce the stuff, because I've talked to different planning. I don't know. I've talked to you guys on the phone, and I know faces with names, and I've texted people, but I don't know. Are you Jacob?
I'm Kyle.
You're Kyle. Okay, I've talked to Kyle, and I've talked to Ann. Who's Ann? You're Ann. Okay, thanks for putting a name with a face. I'm Ramona. So yes, I am just as crazy in person as I am on the phone. But nonetheless, it's just because of my enthusiasm and my passion for this. Because I understand where you guys are coming from. I used to work over here across the street when I was 12 years old and listen to Pauline Wilson fighting with all the city councilmen about stuff like this since I was a kid. So I got you on it, okay?
thank you. But I think that up to this point, the legal, now just the tourist lodging, not the bed and breakfast, we haven't had any issues because the people that own those live in Eureka. Now the one that's sold down the street from me, they don't live in Eureka.
I've got one down the street from me that sold, and the owners don't live here either.
Yeah, that is a big concern to me because they're not vested in the community. They're vested in the business. So,
I know that you have talked before about limiting the numbers, and you alluded to it tonight that, some of the things that we could do is, once they sell,
that's the
gone.
way weekly rentals are.
Right.
The ordinance with weekly rentals is that if they are transferred or they are no longer used as that, they
And
go
I think
away.
we're down to maybe 1 or 2 now on those,
I
right?
think there's 5.
Oh, is there 5 now?
I'm not sure. I'll get with Kyle on that.
yeah, I'll have to double check.
Yeah, but I mean, they go away.
Yeah. Okay, so do you feel like, based on, and I'm just going to ask everybody, do y'all feel like, based on this workshop tonight, would you like to have another workshop, or would you? I'm asking the commission, Linda, because I can't make the decision on my own. So, what do you all think? Do you think we should have another one, or do you want to start putting together a list?
I don't think we need to have another one.
Okay.
I think we have enough for me to get with Kyle and I to draft
Okay.
the ordinance, to bring it to the next planning commission, and then we take it to city council.
Okay, can we also, Kyle, all of those postcards and things that you've gotten, can we make sure that we've got a copy of all of that? Because we'll have to put a packet of information together for city council.
Yeah, I'm putting all that together.
And then the only other thing is, Ann, I've heard different people talk about the fine. It seems like every time we go to a fine, and I'm sorry, we're probably just about out of time, we always run into well, we can't make it over $500, or we can't make it over $1,000.
I'd like to make it 5,000 myself.
Well,
So
yeah,
can we
and-
find out what is involved in
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
something
Yeah,
like that?
And I know that we were researching
Hey,
cutting off the utilities.
I have the
Yes.
answer to that. Your
Yes.
maximum fine you can pass by ordinance is $1,000.
Is it per day?
Yes, you can do $1,000 per day, but $1,000 is your cap. And you have to define operating day. You have to define it,
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
it does.
Hope
But
that
I remember it being like
And
$1,000.
how would we get that fine increased, Ida?
Increase from $1,000, it would have to be like a criminal offense.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, we're bound by
yeah,
that.
We're bound by that by state law, $1,000 for an ordinance.
But it could be an illegal business,
Right.
and there could be a different fine for that.
Illegal business operating with without a business license is $250 a day, so you could slap
Okay.
them with both,
Okay.
I believe. That would be a enforcement question, but
Yeah,
I
so
know those fines.
that's something else. Maybe we can get those numbers put together too. You know, just so we're clear on those. I know
Yeah, I
we've
will.
got like probably no minutes left before our meeting starts. Okay.
Can we make sure that there's something that is communicated to Eureka about reporting illegal? We're sitting here talking about all the legal nice stuff. The reality, there's a lot of illegal here.
Yeah.
And we need a reporting system. There's two things to this. It's no different than the 2311 issue. Reporting system, and the second is enforcement. You need more than one human. It's got to be more than one human. Okay?
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.
Okay. Dave, you want to snap this one off and?
Okay.
All right. So let's.
Is there a sign-up sheet for the meeting?
Yes,